Pastor, if you want fruit that lasts, you need people whose jobs are relationships, not just results. Hey, this is Gabe Kolstad. I want to talk to you about what Jesus said was the most important thing. In John chapter 15, he said, "I'm the vine, you're the branches." And he went on to talk about what his priorities for our lives are. It was bearing fruit. He said fruit. He said more fruit. He said much fruit. And he said fruit that lasts. If we want to build ministries around his priorities, then what we got to have is a fruit-bearing team model. We can't be building things that are strictly systematic or strictly organizational. We have to be building things that are relational. First of all, define the win. If we measure things like attendance and volunteers and giving, which are good things to measure, but if they're the primary measure, what gets lost is we only get activity. And what we want to do is start measuring things like life change and relationships and spiritual movement, because that's where you get fruit. What you celebrate determines what you reproduce. What you celebrate determines what you reproduce. So the first thing that we have to do is define the win. What are we measuring? How do we measure things like moves? This is something that at our church Westside we've been learning, and I think you can do this in so many different ways. But how do you measure movement rather than just numbers? In other words, what's the dashboard supposed to look like if we want to measure movement, spiritual movement? Well, we first have to really structure around moves. So your pathway really matters. Do you have a clear pathway where you're moving people toward the things that are going to bear fruit? In our case, it's the three simple things: Jesus, community, and mission. It's moving people into a connection with Jesus, moving people into a connection with community, and moving people into a connection with their mission, and being able to kind of watch them and walk with them through that relationally, and then have the system behind it that tracks that. That seems to be building something that actually creates fruit. The second thing here is not only define the win, but also build the team. Build the team. This is where you differentiate. We're not looking for platform people on this team. In our case, we have a relational discipleship team. You could build this so many different ways, but we have people that are not just platform people or high capacity executors. We're really looking for relationally wired developers of people. That's a different skill set. That's a different passion. That's a different bent. These are people who notice people. They follow up naturally. They remember stories. They initiate without being asked. People who take responsibility for people. And this is a layer within a ministry that can really make a huge difference. So we have to define the win. We have to build the team. We have to systematize the right behaviors, not programs, but relationships, like at scale. So things like, when do we follow up with people who've made a first contact? Things like, how do we initiate an intentional second conversation? Things like, what is the pathway into community? Things like groups and teams. How do we do ongoing personal check-ins? We can't leave relationships to chance. We have to build pathways for them. And what we can do is really build a team that does this. I think it could be as simple as 3 people. If you're using a scenario like mine where you've got 3 moves, Jesus, community, mission, you could literally just have 1 volunteer for each one of those moves that's responsible to check in with people as they make their first contact. And then once they move into a relationship with Jesus, they can be handed off to volunteer number 2, who's going to help walk that person into community. And then once they're connected, say, to a community group or a team, then we've got volunteer number 3 who can help that person explore what mission looks like in their life. This could obviously scale well beyond that, but it could start as simple as 3 volunteers that help people move rather than just getting them to programs and classes and workshops and events and things like that. Those are all great things, but if we don't have this as a layer, they actually don't produce much fruit. The fourth thing that I want to encourage you to do is to track the fruit without killing it. Track the fruit. Most churches either track nothing or track everything. And what we need is something kind of in the middle, where we're tracking decisions that are significant, like a salvation decision. We're tracking group connections. We're tracking leadership development. We're tracking personal breakthroughs. What we want to track is what God is doing in the lives of people, how they're moving in their life. And lastly, just multiply the culture. This is the part that often we miss, that, if this stays a team, it dies. If it becomes a culture, it multiplies. So how do we help move this into the culture of everything that we do in our churches? I think we do that in a few ways. One, tell stories constantly. Tell stories constantly, because what's celebrated is what's repeated. Celebrate relationship wins, relational wins publicly, and train other people to do the same thing. What starts as a team has to become a culture, or else it's not going to last. If our churches grow numerically and not relationally, we're not producing fruit that lasts. We're just producing churn. And that is not going to bring Jesus's result that he was after in the first place. So I want to challenge you this week to identify a few people who are already naturally relational and pull them together and cast some vision and structure a team and create an experiment and see what will happen. This is going to be something that moves you forward, and I'd love to hear how you're producing fruit that lasts.